let me share with you the dumbest thing that I've read on the internet, I would say all month so far. It comes from the Northwest Progressive Institute, which is basically an arm of the Democratic Party in Washington state. It's run by a political operative. Here's the headline. Let's Go Washington and Brian Haywood reckon with the rising proclivity for political violence fomented by America's right wing. It says violence begets violence. It's therefore not surprising that Republicans and right-wing organizers are now experiencing an increase in political violence themselves. Yes, you're understanding the premise of this blog post correctly. And although this is a basement blogger, he is someone who's very influential within progressive and democratic circles in the state of Washington. He is, as I said, essentially a political operative. And his argument is all of these many dozen instances of signature gatherers being harassed and threatened and assaulted by left-wing lunatics because they want to protect girls' sports and protect parental rights, all of that is because of Donald Trump. It never ceases to amaze me, the things that they will shoehorn into blaming on Donald Trump. And I'm going to get into how vile and toxic this sentiment is that he's pushing out there, and obviously how ridiculous it is. But the timing is also pretty disgusting. These attacks on signature gatherers continue, and they continue to escalate. And now we're having people suffer some pretty serious injuries as a result of the left-wing violence and rhetoric that entities like the Northwest Progressive Institute are spewing. In fact, just yesterday in Poulsbo, a 68-year-old woman was out collecting signatures outside a Walmart when she was attacked. She's got a massive bruise under her arm. And this has been confirmed by the Poulsbo Police Department. Essentially, this 43-year-old woman, identified in police reports as Amanda Lee Haynes of Kingston, Washington, walked in, saw the signature gathering booth and talking about, keeping boys out of girls' sports. She called the 68-year-old victim an effing cunt, a bigot and a bitch. And then when she came outside, she hurled a cart at the signature gathering table, and it caused this injury to this 68-year-old woman. And the surveillance video that the police obtained from Walmart, they say, confirms the account of the victim. So they arrested the suspect, Amanda Lee Haynes, at her place of employment for 3 charges, including assault, disorderly conduct, and violating the state statute that prohibits interference with signature gatherings. So there's some very serious things happening. We talked on the show yesterday about how someone allegedly brandished a handgun at individuals who were collecting signatures, although it's kind of a he said situation. We're not sure if it's going to be enough to prosecute in that case. So all of that's going on, and you have this arm of the Democratic Party in Washington state that is saying it's Donald Trump's fault. Let's continue to read, shall we? So first, they started by claiming, this Andrew Villeneuve way, claiming that, we don't want these signature gatherers to be harassed. We don't want this to happen. It says the right to petition is a protected constitutional right, and it's a right we feel very strongly about here at the Northwest Progressive Institute. Everyone deserves to be able to circulate or sign a petition if they want to without having to fear that they'll be punched or spat on or yelled at or anything of that sort. Mutual respect is very important in healthy democracy. It allows people to disagree peaceably without coming to blows, and it maximizes freedoms, and it helps everyone's cherished First Amendment rights. Doesn't that sound nice? It's weird because this exact institute, Northwest Progressive Institute, back in 2023, while signature gatherers were being harassed and attacked, this exact institute sent one of its minions down to Olympia to testify against a bill that would have added additional protections for signature gatherers.
The bill refers to only people collecting signatures. There's another way to participate in the process, and that is to share with someone who is considering signing a petition what I believe to be the truth, what somebody believes to be true. I had an experience once where I heard someone saying incredibly vile things about gay people, and I interrupted and I corrected, and my 3-year-old daughter actually said, "Please stop saying that. You're hurting people I love." That would be prohibited
Yeah, so the Northwest Progressive Institute went all the way to Olympia in 2023 to argue that they should have a right to be able to harass signature gatherers because we're just bad people. Conservatives bad, conservatives' ideas bad, so you can't pass a law to protect people who are collecting signatures on issues so hateful. So they advocate against it in 2023, no protections for you. And now they're putting out this article saying, oh, we want signature gatherers to be treated with respect. But the reason they're not being treated with respect is because Donald Trump has fomented this environment in America. The article goes on to say mutual respect has been evaporating in this country at an exponential rate as Donald Trump, the Republican Party, and their fascist allies foment political violence to a degree that America has not seen in a very long time. There was a time when top Republicans shunned right-wing extremism, but nowadays they embrace it. They apparently figure that it helps them and wager it's worth any possible blowback. They say it's easy for Brian Haywood to tell Como News and other journalists that violence and intimidation shouldn't be the way we resolve an issue when it's his people who are being harassed. But when it comes to, say, masked goons violently seizing people off our streets, see an example below of a girl being forced to the ground with a knee then brutally placed on her neck, Haywood has nothing to say. So his argument is about Brian Haywood has been making the rounds on news, and he, of course, is the backer of the Let's Go Washington initiatives, and he's been talking about these very numerous, very severe instances of signature gatherers being harassed. And Northwest Progressive Institute says he shouldn't be able to do that because he won't speak out against the violence being perpetrated by ICE agents, or as he refers to them, masked goons. And again, just got done talking about we need mutual respect. And we believe in, peaceful pushback and gathering signatures, mutual respect, as he calls people who support Donald Trump fascists. Again, stupidest thing I've read on the internet this month, but it shows the mindset of the party in power in Washington state. He goes on to write, Haywood himself said that the violence is 10 times worse than it was in 2023. And he says his prior petition drives were all during Joe Biden's presidency. What has been the major change in our politics during the intervening months? Trump's narrow 2024 victory, return to power, and Republicans regaining a trifecta. That's what. This second Trump regime is all about vengeance and retribution. They are quite willing to resort to violence, harassment, and intimidation to get what they want. That's why goons in ICE's employ have been instructed to hurt people, and it's why the National Guard keeps getting illegally federalized over the objections of state governors. Violence begets violence. It's therefore not surprising that Republicans and right-wing organizers are now experiencing an increase in political violence themselves. They unleashed a monster, metaphorically speaking, and they can't control it. Even if they haven't personally called for political violence, repeatedly enabling and abetting those who have done so makes them fully complicit. What a stupid argument is that? And also, to the point that he was attempting to make here, he's saying that during the Joe Biden presidency, the last time Let's Go Washington was running initiatives, the violence wasn't as bad. There was still violence. There was still harassment of lawful signature gatherers. It's because the left wing has done exactly what he is accusing Republicans here of doing under Donald Trump, resorting to violence, harassment, and intimidation to get what they want. No, that's exactly what the left in Washington state has done for years when it comes to conservative-backed initiatives. And really, when it comes to anything else, you have full control in the state of Washington, yet you resort to violence, harassment, shaming, public intimidation whenever anyone steps out of line just a little bit. That is the playbook. That is the playbook. It's not because of Donald Trump, it's because of you. It's because of articles like this. It's because of organizations like the Northwest Progressive Institute that label people who they disagree with as hateful, bigot, fascist, and they send their minions out there to harass them, to assault them, and to stop them from participating in the democratic process. He also has a call to action for me. Can't wait to hear this. Although right-wing media figures love to yap endlessly about Antifa, the data suggests that they are more at risk from disgruntled extremists in their own ranks than they are from anyone on the left. Right-wing on right-wing violence is a thing. And he uses a report that I have talked extensively about being completely off base to try to justify his obviously wrong-headed assertion that right-wing violence somehow poses more of a threat in a state like Washington than left-wing violence. He says, we challenge Brian Haywood, Brandi, Kruse, Jonathan Cho, and all in league with them to do the same. Your values may differ, but you can still be committed to nonviolence consistently. Your demands for civility and enforcement of our laws ring hollow when you're actively enabling the dangerous rhetoric, violent behavior, and illegal acts of the Trump regime. Remember, respect is a two-way street. You're not treating others the way you want to be treated, let alone the way they want to be treated. Interesting. Can you give me one example of me pushing violence or supporting violence? One example. One example. That's all I need. Surely, if you're saying that I'm doing it so frequently, that I'm supporting political violence on the right, I would love just one single solitary example of that. Of course, you don't have any single solitary examples of that. And when you say you're not treating others the way you want to be treated, let alone the way they want to be treated, I don't know if you're referring to me not being willing to call a man a woman. Well, yeah, that's probably not the way they want to be treated, but I operate in reality. So the whole thing is totally unhinged. And I will say, I think it, to me, brings back up the notion that entities like this should be investigated by the federal government. I really believe that. So we're looking at Antifa and ways Antifa can be dismantled. And one of the aspects of that is the funding mechanism. Where are they getting some of the funds, some of these organizations that show up and have these events where people are hurt, where violence ensues? And similarly, this isn't by accident. This just isn't, natural. That you have so many instances of signature gatherers being harassed and having their pages torn up and being assaulted. It's clearly coordinated. Where is that coordination coming from? I've said I think that we need an investigation into entities that have funded things like snitch lines. And this is interesting. I wonder if they know that this is potentially coming. Remember, we talked about WA Families for Freedom. This is a group that opposes the initiatives, and they've called themselves WA Families for Freedom, which is just stupid. But a couple weeks ago on their website, they had a form and a hotline that you could call to report signature gathering. It said, have you seen someone collecting signatures for a Washington ballot measure? We want to hear about it. Please share the details below. And this is similar to what happened. The state Democratic Party ran a snitch line along with their cronies at Fuse Washington in 2023 saying, tell us what the person looked like, tell us what they were wearing. And the plan was, of course, to send out their minions to go harass them. That was the goal. But as soon as we started raising awareness for the fact that this snitch line that's being funded by the Washington Education Association, the Gender Justice League, Pro-Choice Washington, ACLU of Washington. As soon as we pointed out that this was obviously a coordinated effort to undermine democracy that was being paid for by some of the largest donors to the Democratic Party, guess what happened? They took it down. About a week ago, they decided to take it down. Is that because they realize it's wrong? Is that because they realize that now the federal government might be interested to looking into this? That tells me that they know there's some there. Because if you're not doing anything wrong, why take the snitch line down? You were obviously very proud of it. You displayed it prominently on your website. If you weren't doing anything wrong, if you weren't encouraging and funding the harassment of lawful signature gatherers, why take the snitch line down, huh? It's because they know they're doing something wrong. It's because they know where a close look at their books would lead. And I think it would show a couple things, and this is especially true for the Washington Education Association, which was funding the snitch line, the Gender Justice League, and the ACLU of Washington. They also supported the harassment of lawful signature gatherers back in 2023. They are large recipients of taxpayer funds. And I think if the FBI were to crack open their books, they would find payments to groups that have been engaged in left-wing extremism. I genuinely believe that. And if the FBI is interested in looking into it, I intend to help them in any way possible. These organizations shouldn't get a dime of taxpayer funds. And think about how nefarious that is. Washington Education Association gets tens of millions of dollars from the Democratic Party in taxpayer funds to run programs that don't do anything. And it's because they turn around and they use that money to fund Democratic political campaigns. So taxpayer money is used to go to the WEA, to turn around and fund Democratic political campaigns, and to fund things like this, the harassment of lawful signature gatherers. It's time the FBI looks into it. And while you're at it, I would look into the Northwest Progressive Institute as well. because they seem pretty keen on gaslighting people into thinking that Donald Trump is the cause for all of this, oh my gosh, spontaneous assault on signature gatherers. It's not spontaneous, it's coordinated, as with most instances of left-wing violence. One more thing I want to talk about, just because it bothers me to the core in this article, because again, these are the progressives. Oh my God, we're so woke. We love BIPOC people, we love black people. We are so woke and amazing. Here's what they say about the paid signature gathering effort for Let's Go Washington. Eyewitnesses have told Northwest Progressive Institute that Haywood is employing young black men to collect signatures for his 2 culture war measures. How dare he employ black people? Wow, I thought that was a good thing. Apparently not. Judging by their reactions after they got some information about what they were collecting signatures for, they were not properly briefed or trained prior to being sent out in the field. So he is citing anonymous eyewitnesses, telling him that Brian Haywood has black people out collecting these signatures. And these dumb black people don't even know what the initiatives are all about, which is quite fascinating. Because unlike Northwest Progressive Institute, I have actually gone out and spoken to and met many of these paid signature gatherers. Yes, many of whom are black. One of the examples, we had him on our show, is a man named Andre Scott, who has been subjected to some of this harassment of these left-wing lunatics. And one of the questions I asked him is, do you know or support the initiatives you're out there collecting signatures for? Because in this case, the Northwest Progressive Institute thinks you as a black man can't possibly support these things, and you're really too dumb to even understand them. Do you support these initiatives, the idea behind them?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. I support them. Myself, I've got 2 daughters myself, and that's one of the passion that drove me to do this. It's just not about the money. This is, in order to do canvassing, ma'am, you have to have a certain passion. You have to have, there's got to be something in the initiative that you've got to like and want, for yourself before you could give it to the public.
Does that sound like a black man who is duped and too dumb to understand what he's out there collecting signatures for? No, it sounds like someone who, yes, gets paid, does this as a living around the country, but said in order to sell it, in order to convince people to sign it, you have to believe in it yourself. And he's got young daughters, and he wouldn't want boys playing against girls. And every signature gatherer that I have been out there speaking to, whether they're paid or unpaid, believes 100% in what they're collecting signatures for. These aren't anonymous people. Oh, like the eyewitnesses that the Northwest Progressive Institute just happens to say are talking to these black signature gatherers, and they had no clue what they were out there collecting signatures for. No, quite the contrary. They're out there collecting signatures for something that they believe in, and they say, by the way, Andrew with the Northwest Progressive Institute, that of all the places they've collected signatures across the entire country, the woke white leftists like yourself in Washington state have been the most cruel to them. Here's another example. You said this is the worst it's ever been?
The craziest
Is it? People doing crazy stuff?
Literally. I've done petitioning before, but this today was like the most crazy thing.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that. I appreciate you guys being brave. Thank you.
We got to do the right thing.
Got to do the right thing. And I think that's one of the most disgusting parts of this stupid blog post that I don't even want to give attention to, except for it shows the mindset of the Democratic Party. Everything is Donald Trump's fault. Even if someone who they support and identify with goes out and harasses someone, assaults someone, they will always find a way to blame it on Donald Trump. But this to me is the most poison toxic, and it really just exposes the progressive movement for what it is. They don't care about black people. They don't have a high opinion of people of color. They think so low of them that they think that any person who's not white is too dumb and can't think for themselves. And if they're out collecting signatures for these initiatives, someone must have pulled the wool over their eyes. Yeah, very progressive. How very progressive of you.